Love this show I have in my hand. I love tonight's show. It's a very, how should I say, contemplative show. And you know how rarely I use that word. We're jam-packed. We're high atop what was a spirited but is now a drenched downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Still spirited, though, on this Thursday night, June 26th, the year of our Lord 2025. What kind of contemplative show could we have in the works? Well, we were sitting around earlier today, and you're all talking about all these teams, and you're thumbing through your preview magazines, and media days are almost upon us. What do you want to know? You want to know, are they going to be better, worse, or the same as last year? So why not do a show about that? I'm not going to do the whole show about that, mind you, but we are going to do that, which I don't think we've ever done that kind of segment here before. I don't know why. It only took us 5 years. I got some chaos scenarios on the show tonight. I have got bold predictions. We do that this time of year. But you know what? I saw some content. Some would call it propaganda. I would just call it good old-fashioned content floating around the other day. Not from us, but from someone else. They were talking about the toughest places to play in college football. And the list, I don't know how else to put it. It was wrong. The list was just wrong. Your opinion is wrong, and that's an absolute fact, as Meemaw used to say. So how can we know what the toughest places to play in college football are when we haven't even released our list at Pate State? But do you hear how thick that stack of papers is? We got it in here. We got everything in here tonight. You're watching us in Youngstown, Ohio, Ocilla, Georgia, Modesto, California, St. Petersburg, Florida is tuned in. I promise you this. You may think that when the season gets here, that's our busy time of year. It is June 26th. I'd be willing to bet, for reasons that you'll find out about several weeks from now, our June has been busier than our October or November will end up being this year. I'm almost looking forward to the season for obvious reasons, but also because things will settle down a little bit. Crazy. All good things, mind you, all good things, but nevertheless, it's a busy, busy time of year. So let's dive into the show tonight because you don't really care about that. You care about this. Are you going to be better than you were last year? Are you going to be worse than you were last year? Is your record going to be the exact same as it was last year? Well, I was thinking about that, and I got 4 teams at least to start off with that we drew out of the hopper. Ping pong balls came out, and these are some of the teams that we're thinking about right now. And I'm talking about your record in the regular season, okay? So, like, take LSU. Let's just start off with them. LSU was an 8-4 team last year in the regular season. Their over-under win total, for what it's worth, is 8.5 at FanDuel right now. Is that team going to be better or worse than they were last year? Or are they going to stay the same? I lean better. If I'm betting money on this, and full disclosure, I have a little bit with LSU, I'm going to bet a little bit better. So it's all because of the number 1 portal class. I am a big believer that if you erase that portal class or you just shave it down a little bit, this team would be in big trouble this year. But I don't think they are because they did that. Now, everyone's going to look at Nussmeier, rightfully so. And everyone's going to zoom in on the continuity at quarterback in a world and in a year where there's not a lot of that outside of Baton Rouge. And that's valid. The reason I would be to the net up on LSU in relation to last year is because, well, I get Blake Baker in his second year as defensive coordinator with better ingredients in the kitchen. It's really what it comes down to. I got faith in him. Now, we know LSU cannot win a week 1 game to save their lives. So let's say they lose at Clemson. I would still slightly lean that they finish better than last year's record. It would help, if they mess around and accidentally win against Clemson, well, then watch out. But I know a lot of people who are baking in a Clemson loss and also predicting a good year for LSU. I think they're going to be okay at offensive tackle. I know that's going to be thrown around a lot as people start getting closer and they look at the projected starting lineups. I'm okay with them. I think I'm okay with them at tackle. So I'm going to go better than 8-4 regular season for LSU. Now, the next one I cannot do better on, at least. Colorado was 9-3 last year. Phenomenal year. Just unbelievable year. They went over by like 4 or 5 games or something like that. So their over-under win total 6.5 coming into this year. I can't bet Colorado to be better than 9-3. I got to lean that they're worse. They could overachieve and be a couple of games worse than they were last year. It's just who's starting at quarterback? Is Caden Salter starting for him at quarterback? That's the best guess around here right now. Shador saved them so much. When I'm trying to think forward about how you're going to look, I don't try and dwell on the past, but I do think about the past as any sane person would. So when I think about Colorado in the past, Shedeur Sanders is obviously playing quarterback for him, but I am thinking about not just his production, but him running for his life, his off-schedule production, if you will. In other words, the plays that were made that weren't drawn up on a piece of paper, they were just broken down play. You got a phenomenal athlete there, and he makes something out of nothing. Well, you don't have another version of him there. And secondly, you're relying on the portal again, and you just got to keep hitting. And I haven't even mentioned the Heisman Trophy winner in Travis Hunter. So you lose all that. You're already in a highly volatile league in the Big 12. Well, what that means is 9-3 is never far away from 5-7 in a league like that. And so, you could fall off to 5-7 and not really have fallen off all that much production-wise. So what happens if you actually do fall off significantly production-wise? So Colorado, I'd have to go worse than 9-3. Miami's a tough one for me. So Miami was 10-2 last year. Miami goes 10-2 a season ago. They have the number 1 overall pick in the draft at quarterback in Cam Ward. How do they do better than that? I would have to slightly lean worse for Miami. Their over-under win total is 9.5. So, it's a very slight lean to the under for me. It's a very slight lean at worse than 9-2. The wide receiver room's got to pan out. If you were to promise me the wide receiver room pans out, then they got a good shot at going 10-2 or better. Heatherman, the new defensive coordinator, I trust he'll have an impact, a positive impact there. Is it an eventual impact, or is it a glaringly immediate impact? Like they play Notre Dame in week 1. Is it immediately obvious that, that's a different squad defensively? Well, if it is, then again, forget about what I'm saying. That's a 10-2 or better team. But the other thing to think about in the interest of just comparing records year over year, you, in a lot of cases, are what your schedule says you are in this sport. Well, they're out of conference is no joke. They open against Notre Dame. They've got Florida in here. Both of those games are at home, but they play both of them. And then I keep going back to the way they finish the season. You guys can say whatever you want to say about the ACC strength of schedule. Like, no, it doesn't measure up to the Big Ten or the SEC by and large, but notice Florida State here, right there. It's tough. I feel like I'm on a green screen. They play Florida State on October 4th. Big deal, okay? But notice they have a bye week before Florida State. Also, big deal. They've got one after they play Florida State. In the interest of sabotaging Miami, the ACC schedule maker said, we're going to give you both of your bye weeks in a 3-week stretch. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have you play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive games to end the year. Oh, by the way, if that's not enough, you're going back-to-back road games to finish that 7 games in a row stretch. Oh, by the way, you're from Coral Gables. Let's send you to Blacksburg and Pittsburgh in late November. And if you get through all that, you get to go on the road for a 3rd straight week to go to the ACC championship game. Have fun. Little butt pat there, immunity. Have fun. So because of those things, if I had to bet, I'd slightly lean worse than 10-2 for Miami. Now, you'll notice I've been brave. So far, I haven't gone same record. That is because I knew we were coming to Notre Dame, who Miami opens with. Notre Dame went 11-1 last year. Better this year would mean undefeated. So I'm not going better. But you know what? I'm not going worse either. I'm pretty high on Notre Dame. So I got them right around that same caliber. Notice, I'm not saying go to the national title game. I'm just talking about the regular season record. Whatever happens in the playoff is whatever happens. They're in a good spot because they accomplished a lot last year, but they maintained the hunger. They had a nice regular season. They also lost to Northern Illinois. So you've got that you got that whole, tension in the shoulders, looking over them constantly. You can't rest on your laurels, can't take anything for granted. You also lost in the national title game, so you can pound in your guys' heads. They didn't accomplish anything. You've got a new quarterback. So I don't think complacency is an issue up there whatsoever. And it's a 3-game season in terms of teams that'll line up across from them that can come close to matching them athletically. That doesn't mean that they couldn't lose at Boston College. That doesn't mean they couldn't go to Arkansas and lose. But if they do that, it's a legit upset. They go to Miami week 1. That's a very athletically competitive game. They've got A&M coming in there. That's a very, very athletically competitive game. And they've got USC the 18th of October. And I don't know, man. I think it could be a really, really good team. And so for that reason, I'm sticking right there around that 11-1 mark. Their over-under win total is 10.5. I'm going same. I limit myself to one same record per 4 teams. I'm going same record for Notre Dame. Academy Sports and Outdoors, probably get some Notre Dame gear there. And Miami and Colorado and LSU. In fact, Academy Sports and Outdoors had a nice meeting with them this week, which is very good that it wasn't recorded because a vast majority of the flavor of conversation between myself and the Academy reps would get all of us fired if it were ever made public. But it's not. I'll tell you what is public. Every one of their stores. No private academies out there. No. This isn't where management grew up. This isn't management's neighborhood. No private academies. Every academy here is public. The doors are open, at least from open to close. And even after they close, academy.com is wide open. So, you want to go camping this summer? They got your hookup. You want to go play soccer this summer? Oh, do both. I don't care. They got your hookup. You need a refill on Big League Chew? They got your hookup. Rods and reels for fishing? They got your hookup. Bucket of softballs? They got your hookup. They are the presenting partner of this show. We are brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. They've been with us from day one. I always tell people, because believe it or not, they ask fairly regularly, number one, where do you get your T-shirts? And then number two, how do you support the show above and beyond just watching and listening? To which I answer, you're doing plenty if you're watching or listening. But also, go shop at Academy. You're going to buy stuff they have anyway. Go do it at Academy. They are friends of the program. They keep the show free, and we appreciate it. I hold in my hand. Sorry, Bradley, I went pretty quick there. All right, here we go. I hold in my hand chaos. In the interest of chaos scenarios for college football in the year of our Lord 2025, what would stir the pot the most? Well, I think one of the things, as one of you brought up the other day, that would be fairly chaotic is if the SEC just cannibalized itself again, which just happened this past year. And it, I think, is more likely than not that it happens again this year. If we're going sides of the coin, or if I guess that wouldn't be good because that's 50-50. Like if we're going to percentages, what's more likely? You've got a couple of elite teams that just elevate and leave everyone in the dust in the SEC? Or is it kind of like last year where, yeah, you've got a hierarchy, but Georgia won the league. And they were very vulnerable last year. Texas played them in the SEC championship game, and Texas got eliminated in the playoffs. And so the point is, you could have that again this year in the conference. Now, you could also listen to me say that if you've never beaten the drum of a conference. Let's just say you're a Portland State fan, and you watch major college football above and beyond watching your guys play. You're like, okay, well, who cares if there's not an elite team in the SEC? If there's just a bunch of really good teams, what does that matter? Good question. The answer, everything. It matters everything because of the conversation around this league. Most of it their own doing, but because of the conversation around this league, there is no conventional wisdom when talking about the SEC. There is no logic-based reasoning when talking about the SEC. This is a conference where people will look you dead in the eye and tell you they're in the middle of a drought because they've gone 24 months without winning a national championship. And when you laugh, they'll look at you and say, what's so funny? What's so funny? SEC fanboy, what's so funny? Nothing, sir. Where does chaos come from? Well, it comes from, in this sport, expectation not being met. But the chaos is really born here from the public perception. You know, if the public looks at the SEC and they do anything less than win a national title, the public's going to say, ha, SEC's done. SEC cooked. Bye. SEC yesterday's news. SEC just not what it used to be. The follow-up question to that could be, why does that matter? Well, aside from, just the nature of what this sport is about, which is you and a guy named Carl at work around the water cooler talking about it back and forth to pass the time during the day, which I used to do in the fabric warehouse every day, so I know good and well how that works. Aside from that, there's this small little matter right now of the power leagues, and by that I mean the Big Ten and the SEC, sort of deciding how they're going to rule the world. because we know everybody wants to rule the world. But the follow-up Tears for Fears song that didn't do so good on the charts is only the Big Ten and the SEC actually do rule the world. I think the title was too long. Anyway, what happens if the SEC throws all their weight around and they decide on some format that no one likes, and it's sort of born in the idea or the premise that they are so far above and beyond superior to the likes of the ACC, the likes of the Big 12, and then they just crash and burn? Because remember, the way the timeline's going to work this year is college football season starts in September and it ends, who knows, sometime in January. But they've got to decide on that future playoff format by early December. So you don't know how the season turned out before they have to, etch that in stone. I never get how those deadlines work, because that's kind of like me saying, I've got to be in bed by 11 tonight. Well, what happens if I'm up at 11:13? I just go to bed at 11:20. What's the penalty? It's kind of self-imposed. So anyway, aside from that, I always think in documentary terms, which I've shared many times on the show. I always think when anyone talks about anything that's currently happening, I always think about the documentary that's going to be made 10 years from now. So 10 years from now, when we are watching the documentary about this period, and what a documentary it will be, by the way. But when we're watching the documentary about this period, there will be a lot of talk about changes in the sport, and there'll be a lot of talk about the SEC. Now, you could find yourself watching the documentary, and they're saying the SEC was dominant for a long time, then the greatest head coach of all time retired, and the league sort of stumbled for a second, seemingly, but then it regained its footing, and it maintained itself as the predominant force in college football for several more years to come. You could be hearing someone say that. Or you could be hearing someone say the SEC was on top in an era, and as that era gave way to a new era, the SEC's power grip on the sport declined. That coincided with the greatest head coach of all time retiring. The greatest head coach of all time probably made a shrewd tactical move to retire when he did. And then for an extended period of time, it became obvious the SEC wasn't going to be anymore what it had been, but it took some people a lot longer to come to that realization. You could hear people say either of those things in 2035. The fun part is, right now, we don't know. You don't know how the documentary is going to shake out because we don't know how the future is going to shake out. I do sometimes. They give the spoilers to me, but in the interest of drama, I don't share them. They're watching us in Elmore City, Oklahoma, Jackson, Tennessee, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Thank you guys so much. We have, by the way, yes, our friend Orange Creamsicle Zevia has made yet another appearance tonight. I know I talk about Zevia a lot, and I know I touted cream soda for a long time, and I'm still a big fan of cream soda, zero sugar Zevia. Huge fan of it, okay? It will always have a special place in my heart. But Orange Creamsicle has a new place in my hand because Orange Creamsicle's #1 now. And Orange Creamsicle Zevia, available at Sprouts, and I'm told only Sprouts for the time being. I got some offers this week. I'm not selling my Zevia Creamsicle. I'm not selling it, but I'm just saying I got some offers for it. So apparently we did some pretty effective taste testing on the show. I didn't even chill this one. That is room temperature, and it's good. So I'd be on the lookout. Now, some of you are going to go to Sprouts, and you've never even been there before. Sprouts is not even a partner on the show. They are just the beneficiaries of the fact that they are shelving Orange Creamsicle Zevia. Anyway, that's not chaotic. But I'll just get back to one more. The whole chaos scenario season that's upon us gave birth to another possibility that one of you brought up the other day. USC, the curious case of USC. If USC has that backslide continue, it's a big problem. This would be a chaos scenario. I really do believe that. They had Lincoln Riley come in there 3 years ago. It was kind of at the dawning of a new era for college football. He leaves Oklahoma, really just like a bombshell moment. I know everyone who's watching the show remembers it, but like really try and remember it. I don't know what the most shocking moments of the past 20 years have been, but that one's way up there. There was no rumor of it whatsoever until it happened. You know how rare that is this day and age to read any good news on the newspaper page? So Lincoln Riley goes to USC. Do you remember when he got there, how excited everyone in LA was? I would have been too. But why were they excited? They were excited because you were getting a guy who had put explosive offense after explosive offense on the field. He's a proven winner. He's a playoff guy, Heisman Trophy winners at the quarterback position. It's tailor-made for USC, and he's coming to USC at the dawning of the new NIL portal era. This is where big brands in big markets are going to have a massive upper hand on the Alabamas of the world. I mean, look, Alabama, Clemson, their days of dominating are done. Now it's going to be, if you're in Los Angeles, California, I mean, you could run college football. Well, it just hasn't worked out that way. Because it turns out this sport's still pretty tough. Still pretty tough. 11-3 the first year. Looked like they were off to the races. 8-5 the next year. 7-6 last year. And a bunch of one-possession losses. Now, the widely held expectation is that they'll bounce back from that this year. Full disclosure, I believe that. So I don't think they'll be worse than 7-6 this year. I do expect a bounce back. So I believe in it. But I could be wrong. The chaos scenario would be if I'm wrong. And the chaos scenario is their over-under win total's 8 or 8.5, I think, right now. What if they go 6-6 or 7-5? What if they're no better than they were last year, maybe slightly worse than they were last year? Think about the can of worms that opens. No one has faith in Lincoln Riley anymore if that happens. Nobody. Very few people would have faith in him. And so the energy around the program would crater, which means that recruiting class likely falls apart, or at the very least, it splinters. It's fragmented, at the very least. And that's the genesis of a lot of the momentum around the program right now, is we just brought a new GM in. We got this whole new approach to recruiting, and we loaded up on the front end. We kind of went and got ultra aggressive. They already got like 50 commits, not quite that, but they got a loaded class with verbals already. Penn hasn't hit paper yet. They got the number one class in the country right now. What happens if they're a loser this fall? And then you got to ask yourself this. All right, if the recruiting class starts to fall apart, you've got that. You've got Lincoln Riley with back-to-back losing seasons now. He's regressed every year since he got here. We're opening brand new facilities. I mean, I'm telling you, a year from now, what you're supposed to be saying is USC just bounced way back, and we just signed a top 5 recruiting class, and we're debuting brand new facilities, and everything's pointing up for Southern Cal football. That's what you're supposed to be saying. But all those tumblers have to fall into place. Most importantly, you got to win on the field, or else it could all fall off the cliff. Then what do you do with Lincoln Riley? I have no answer for you. It's not in my game plan. When I'm forecasting right now, I am not forecasting that for USC. And so if I'm forecasting 75 degrees tomorrow and I wake up and it's 46, I don't know what to do. I'm not dressed for it. I'm not prepared for it. I don't know what to do. So that would truly be a chaotic scenario. And remember, you're in the Big Ten. The Big Ten's not going to sit around and just kind of chill while you get your you-know-what figured out. It leaves you in the dust. You don't have the benefit of knowing no one's going to pull away from you. They will pull away from you. Now, some would argue they already did, but the counter to that, and I know this because we had Lincoln Riley on the show a couple of months ago, and he said it. He said, anyone who believes that, did you watch us play last year? And I nodded my head. I agree with him. But that's all based on the kind of concept, okay, well, they'll bounce back this year if all that's right. But if they're not right, they won't bounce back. And that would be chaotic. So whoever sent that to us, yeah, valid points there. Valid points. Appreciate you guys being tuned in live. Hey, we run a fair amount of polling on our show. We're not the only show that figured out the polling mechanism on social. I saw our good close friends over there at the Dan Le Batard show today. This is how you know you're making an impact. All we want to do is we want to talk college football year round, and we want to make a positive impact on the world. Okay, so we do one, and then to achieve the other, we try and enhance the vernacular of this great society of ours. Everybody talks about the public education statistics and how everything's in the gutter. Well, all we can do at Pate State is try and rectify that. So we speak the Queen's English around here. We're speaking proper English. You hear me say the word hoomst every now and then. Sometimes I'll throw in the hoomstuv. And then if you're really advanced, in the 4,000 level courses, we'll do the double apostrophe hoomstuduv. It's just a way to save time. Who would have? That takes so long. Hoomstuduv. Hoomstuduv thunk it. Dan Lebitard and company ran a poll this morning. Have you ever used the word hoomst? Now, these results may discourage you. That only 44.9% said yes, while 55.1% said no. But you need to know, before I brought this to the public's attention, we were down like 30-70. The yeses were down bad. So just know out there, if you had a bad day at work today, if the family situation is not what you want it to be, if the financial situation is not what you want it to be, if your favorite team is not even projected to make a bowl game this fall, you can at least rest comfortable tonight, knowing that in some small way, we are making a difference. Our voices are being heard. I don't know if that helps a tough family dynamic at home or not, but we're making a difference somehow in some small way. Okay, that was a very lighthearted moment, but it's about to get serious. I feel like I paused there because we were going to play some sound effect. No, but it's about to get serious. Let me calm myself. I'm going to take a second sip of Zevia. There is, by the way, hidden meaning to the color of this can tonight. I didn't realize that until right now. But there is. All right, here we go. I was told the other day that our friends at EA Sports committed a hate crime against several universities. And I said, well, that sounds serious. What happened? Well, it turns out they did the worst thing that you could do. They released the toughest places to play in college football list and didn't put everyone at the exact proper order that everyone believes they should be placed. And so I had to go look for myself. And I got to be honest, sometimes there's false outrage in this great sport of ours, which is great. I participate a lot. This is not false outrage, okay? They just got this wrong. Now, I don't know exactly how they define toughest places to play. It could just be who has the best winning percentage at home. It could be that over the past 5 years. It could be any of a number of things. But I got to tell you, Bradley, throw that back up for a second. I got to tell you something. There is some mild oversight here. There's some mild under and overrating, but there is some egregious oversight. So if you're listening on podcast, let me quickly tell you their 1 through 10. LSU, Penn State, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. It's already terribly flawed. Clemson 6, Florida 7, Oklahoma 8, Oregon 9, Michigan 10. All right, keep that up, Bradley. Immunity. You hope. What are we doing with Ohio State number 3? LSU 1, no problem. Penn State number 2, no problem. Mind you, I go to all these places. I stand on the field. This is an intentional flex. I got the greatest job in the world. I am uniquely qualified to comment on these matters because I go to all these places when they're at their best, theoretically. So I've seen most all of them. Ohio State is not a top 5. Ohio State wins all the time because Ohio State's really good. So if you're telling me Ohio State belongs in the top 3 because their home winning percentage is through the roof, I would encourage you to look at Ohio State's winning percentage no matter where they're playing. So if that's the case, we have different criteria. What I'm talking about is like how much better is a team at home because of the environment that is created there? How worse is a team when they go into your building than they would have been elsewhere? Like that's what makes a tough place to play. When I'm standing next to someone on the sideline and I'm trying to talk to them and they're staring right at me but still going, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. That's a tough place to play. Ohio State's great, but it's not top 5. Georgia's not top 5 either. Bama, although better now that Saban's gone and everyone doesn't sit on their hands and just yawn and take for granted that they're going to win, Bama's not top 5. So 3, 4, 5, They will be out. I'm about to release mine in a few minutes, by the way. Clemson is okay. Florida's okay. Oklahoma, I went back and forth. I was there for the Tennessee game last year, very lively. I still thought maybe a tick off of the upper echelon elites. Oregon absolutely belongs higher than number 9. Michigan does not belong in the top 10. And I've seen Michigan with Ohio State in town, a phenomenal atmosphere. But again, you're talking about going against the heavyweight cathedrals in this sport, and some of these places are built up, and your place is built out. You got 400,000 people in there, but I think architecture hurts you a little bit. They went further than that. Like, they went all the way to, I believe, a number 20 or something like that. I'm just quickly going to tell you, A&M at 11, properly rated. The crime against humanity is Tennessee at number 12, but we're going to make it right in just a second. Texas at 13, all right. Florida State, 14, all right. Wisconsin, 15, never been there. So I got to take your word for it. South Carolina, it belongs higher than 16. Auburn and Washington at 17 and 18 make me wonder if anyone's ever even been to those places. Iowa at 19, I could say the same. Utah at 20, okay. Listen, when you watch someone getting beat up on the side of the road, you can either take pictures of it and post it on the gram, or you could go break up the fight. So I saw this happening. I saw legitimate harm being done to this great sport of ours, tongue-in-cheek, there it is. And I said, I got to go break this up. I got to do something about this. I know all these places. I've seen all these places. I know which places are the toughest to go play. So you know what? I got it right here. The toughest places to me, and this is definitive, and we all agree that I'm the authority on this, right? Speak up now. All right, Jesse, Bradley, I don't hear anybody. Okay, so yeah, we all agree that I'm the authority on this. I'm going to go 12-1 because that's the amount of teams that we can fit on the graphic and make it look good. I have got Georgia at number 12. Georgia this year has an opportunity to skyrocket up this list because Georgia finally has a really, really legitimate home slate. They've got Texas coming in there. They got Ole Miss coming in there. They got Bama coming in there. Georgia doesn't get a ton of big games at home. They're kind of like Bama has been for a long time. When is Georgia threatened? Georgia rarely feels threatened. Tennessee game, kinda, sometimes, like last year, but by and large, no. So I put Georgia at 12 with a ton of room to vault back up. Texas A&M I've got at 11. Texas A&M is one of the more underrated places in the country, both as the program's potential and also home field. People always have an axe to grind about the culture, and they really emphasize the first 4 letters in the word culture when it comes to Texas A&M. But I got no problem with it because I just call that tradition. You call it culture, I call it tradition. The place is insanely loud. And I also think that they're just sort of at the period now where they can get back into competing. They can get back into the groove of like being a contender. And so you'll get to see Kyle Field on display a lot more. But I've been there. I know what it's about. So I got it at number 11. I put Ohio State at number 10. While I'm not as high on Ohio Stadium in terms of an environment as EA, it's still a really, really good environment. So make no mistake about it. Like, I've been there for several big games, including night games. For some reason, people think I haven't been there for a night game. I've been there. I was there for the Tennessee game. That was a playoff game last year. So, yes, we'll gladly put the horseshoe in the top 10, just not the top 5. It's partly a credit to the fact that you guys have won for so long that, again, you don't feel threatened a whole lot. And then I've been in there, when Michigan's come in there, and you know good and well you're supposed to beat them. So there's this nervousness, very, very surreal. But yeah, Ohio Stadium, top 10, just not top 5. Clemson at number 9. Clemson, great atmosphere. Got no complaints. I also think that it's just a wonderful thing that we get to see that place in week 1 this year. LSU going to Clemson, not Atlanta, not New Orleans, great American cities, but college football needs to be played on home campi, plural of campus, and we get to see Clemson in all of its glory. So release the balloons. Dabo outrun his entire roster down the hill. Let's go. Clemson at number 9. I got Alabama at number 8. I think last year's Georgia game sort of reemphasized what Bryant-Denny Stadium is supposed to be. Bryant-Denny Stadium for a long time, because of the guy the field is now named after, had fallen down this list. It is a consequence of continued success. It's tough to go in there and feel threatened when you're favored by double digits every week, and you got an entire season, like a generation now, really, of season ticket holders and students and alumni that have become conditioned to it. Well, then last year, all of a sudden you're not conditioned to it and you feel very vulnerable. And then Georgia comes in there and place is just on fire. It may have been the best atmosphere we experienced all of last year, was that Georgia-Alabama game. Now I'm putting Bama at 8 because I need to see more for it. I mean, here's what I think about Bama. I think that place was louder before they finished the full enclosure of the end zone construction projects, because they hadn't become conditioned to being a national title favorite every year back then. The trade-off to all the enhanced amenities and the increased capacity was you got that because Saban was winning a whole lot, which just means 101,000 people that are fairly into it does not out-audible 88,000 people that are really into it. But you could have both. You could have both. Number 7, oh, this ought to go over well down there. Auburn. Auburn is at its best, one of the best in the country. I'm going to have people who are going to throw Auburn's home record in my face. They're going to point out that Diego Pavia and New Mexico State went in there and won. Having a great home field atmosphere, being a tough place to play, doesn't overcome your team sucking. There's no amount. You could just line jet engines up around the field, and if your team sucks, they just suck. And the place is going to look like a COVID game by the fourth quarter, because there's going to be 5 feet between every spectator that's left, mainly family and close friends of players. But when Auburn is decent to good and you get a big game in Jordan-Hare Stadium, the only people who doubt that are people who haven't been in there. Jordan-Hare Stadium is just insane. It may be low at number 7. Really, it may be low at number 7. Call up Kirby Smart, call up Saban. Call up Les Miles, like back in the day when LSU would go in there. So Jordan-Hare Stadium gets slept on because their team's not perennially good. Auburn's good in flashes. So you only get to see what I'm talking about in flashes. But when you see it, and especially if you've experienced it, if you've ever been in there, you know what I'm talking about. The next place, take everything I just said about Auburn, and it applies even more to the next place. They didn't have Washington in the top 10. Washington is amazing. Husky Stadium, when Washington's good and there's a big game there, I don't care what the capacity is. Most of you will doubt this. I don't think you've ever been there. I hadn't for a long time. Until 2 years ago, I had never been up there. So I mocked people when they talked about how loud and intimidating Husky Stadium was. And like pretty much everything Washington did to me 2 years ago, I got my mouth shut when I went up there for the Oregon game. I don't need it explained to me in physiological terms or even terms of architecture. Whatever it is, it sounds like a runway at SeaTac, which is the airport up there. It's just amazing. Unbelievable sustained decibel level. And so not only do you get beautiful scenery, you get an incredibly loud and hostile and intimidating environment. You are going to have people from Ocala, Florida, and Spartanburg, South Carolina, who are going to argue this till they're blue in the face, and they've never been there. Go to a game there, a big one, where Washington's good, and it's competitive through 4 quarters, and you won't come back feeling the same way. Washington is an insanely hard place to go play. Oregon's right there with them. Two of the most lively, hostile places that I ever have been to watch college football games, Seattle and Eugene. I put Oregon right here at number, well, actually, I got one in between them. Oregon's 4. Give me Florida at number 5. EA had Florida properly rated. I think they had them at like 7 or something like that. Just a little bit higher on Florida. And this is, again, with the caveat that if Florida's not good, there's really not much the Swamp can do to help the team. But if Florida is good, there is a ton the Swamp does. This was not something that needed to be debated in the 90s and the 2000s. It was accepted. Then Florida had a downswing for an extended period of time, and people forgot about the Swamp. People started sleeping on the Swamp. And that's a mistake. That's a big mistake. I am a believer that the Texas game this year is the Swamp's opportunity. That is Florida's opportunity to reestablish the home field environment and the home field edge that's always been there. It's just waiting to be taken advantage of. The Miami game was their opportunity last year, but they tripped over themselves. It got dominated by Miami is another way to put that. So I got Ben Hill Griffin Stadium down there, the Swamp at number 5. I got Autzen Stadium at number 4. We went up there for the Ohio State game this past year. Incredible. Incredible. I was with several Ohio State people. Let me just leave it at that. Before, during, and after the game. Mainly before and during the game. I was with a lot of Ohio State folks that obviously they've been to the shoe a lot. And they came out there and it was like they might as well have been taking notes. They saw what game day is supposed to be. And it was good. It was good for Ohio State to go out there and see that. And it was good for everybody with the ability to make decisions to go out there and see that. Sometimes you just need to get your shoulders shaking a little bit. And they went out there. They lost a competitive game, a great game. But more importantly for what we're talking about here, they went out there and saw this place has a fraction of the capacity as our place. And it's louder. It's crazier in here. Why is that? Well, that's part of the beauty of college football. You don't always have to have a solid reason why. But Oregon's number 4. Penn State at number 3. Noon game after noon game after noon game. But you know what? They still deliver. But what do we know about that Oregon game this year? They get the whiteout game in prime time. That's week 5, right, Jesse? It's early in the season, but it's the NBC. It's the 7:30 game. So anyone who's forgotten, hadn't been that long, but anyone who's forgotten what that place is under the lights, whiteout conditions, they got a little reminder coming when Oregon goes in there. That's the same night at the same time as Bama at Georgia. What a day that's going to be. So I got Penn State at number 3. I know it feels like I'm kind of skipping over them. I just don't feel like a whole lot else needs to be said. I remember we went up there a few years ago. My first game at Penn State was a whiteout game. It was weird. I think like Auburn went up there and played or something like that, and that was a whiteout game. I remember the way I experienced it was like a football game, but also a rock concert and a major pro wrestling event. That's the way I experienced it. That's the way I came back and explained it to my buddies who hadn't been there. Give me LSU at number 2. LSU's one of the things that gets hyped up a lot. Death Valley at night is one of the things that gets hyped up a lot in this sport that's not overhyped. There is really not much justice that I could do it until you've experienced it in person. Now, if you're an LSU fan, it's a fun experience. It's a very, very intimidating and hostile experience going in there as an opposing fan, much less a player, which I always thought college football should be. It's not the worst thing in the world. Like you never put your hands on anyone else and don't do what that little small cadre of OKC fans did to the little Pacers kid the other night. Don't be doing all that. But outside of that, yeah, you shouldn't feel all that comfortable when you're going into a road team's building. That's what it's like going into LSU. The smells are wonderful. The sounds are wonderful. The food beforehand is wonderful. The game's usually wonderful. Just make it a point to do it. Make it a point to go there. Just some of the most, if you cut college football open, you want to know what bleeds out of it. That right there, that's kind of what you should see bleeding out. Go ahead and throw it up, Bradley. I got all the respect in the world for the folks at EA. To have Tennessee outside the top 10 of toughest places to play in college football is evidence of drug use. Not only is Tennessee top 10, Neyland Stadium's the toughest place to play in college football. Don't start with me. You can go argue with this wall over here. I've been there for the best of it. This right here is not footage that we ripped from a network. That is straight from the eye, Josh. I shot this myself. I've been there. I've been a part of it. Deafening. And also, there is the psychological factor of the fact that Rocky Top's the most annoying sound in the world to anyone who's not a Tennessee fan. So you practice with it all week, blaring on the loudspeakers, and everyone's drilling it into your head. You got to go beat Tennessee, or this is what you're going to hear. And it's great if you go beat them and shut them up. But if you don't, Do you know what it's like to be trailing Tennessee? Tennessee takes the lead on you in the fourth quarter, and they're just blaring Rocky Top. You got 100,000+ people singing it at the top of their lungs. Psychologically, it does something to you because you convinced yourself all week, we ain't letting that happen. And then it starts to happen. I've never been in an avalanche before, but I imagine Tennessee taking the lead on you in the fourth quarter and Rocky Top blaring during one of the 9-minute commercial breaks you're going to take, depending on the network. That's what an avalanche of orange feels like. Bill Martin, avalanche of orange. Get the marketing ready. Get the promotion machine ready. So I not only do I have them top 10, not only do I have them top 5, I got Tennessee as the number 1 toughest place to play in college football. These are non-negotiable. They are not debatable. These are not opinion. This is fact. You take that to the bank, and it's fluid. It could change year to year, but these are the definitive rankings right now. Not even ratings. These are rankings, and you can take that to the bank. So congratulations to Tennessee. Someone loves you, at least. Someone, mainly just the people who are paying attention. Quick Trip, got 2 of them, I think. If we drove from here to Knoxville, we got at least 2 of them that we would go by. Not only would we go by them, we would go inside. And we would fill up outside. Okay, first off, we need car fuel. And then we also need me fuel. And that comes in the form of cold brew on tap. Or maybe, are you not a cold brew fan? Wow. Well, maybe if you're not a cold brew fan, go get you a little protein shake or just a normal coffee or one of 57 different varieties of slushies or flavored teas. They really, really got you covered. And then you go get a various roll over there on the roller grill or just some good old-fashioned pizza, maybe some trail mix. Whatever your flavor, Quick Trip has you covered. We appreciate them. Had a meeting with them today. Had a meeting with QTJ today. He knows who he is. He knows whomst he is. All right, let's continue on. More questions. So ready to get answers. So ready. Oh, the orange creamsicle Zevia is calling me. Jesse, that's got to be a record number of sips on the show tonight. I asked you for some of the biggest questions in college football this year, and someone just got straight to the point. Charles said, can Dabo capitalize with a roster that gives him his best national title shot since 2019? You know what, Charles? Good question. I would put this up there with the most intriguing questions of this college football season. Really, if you think about what we're looking at, where else would you rather be? Like if you were placing your hope somewhere, just let's say you walk in, you're an agnostic fan, you don't really side with anyone, you're just kind of figuring out, all right, well, what can I depend on the most? Well, why not Clemson? When are they going to do it again if they don't do it this year? They're number 1 in returning production from a team that won the conference last year. You got like a third-year starter at quarterback who was great last year down the stretch. His same coordinator is there again. They added Tom Allen on the defensive side. They got NFL guys at all 3 levels of the defense. They have, in fact, I would call this a paper popper stat. They got 21 underclassmen that played 200+ snaps. I had a hiccup there. Let me repeat in case anyone wanted to clip that. 21 underclassmen got 200+ snaps last year for Clemson. Those guys will be back this year. That led FBS. So here's what's really, really intriguing about this to me. You can feel however you want to about it. It's a classic fork in the road moment. Because if they win the national title this year, I don't know that I've ever seen a bigger I told you so in the history of this sport. If Dabo Swinney, after several years of having people tell him he's going about the portal era the wrong way, he's going about the NIL era the wrong way, after all that, I'm included in that. So I am over here with the people who, to a certain degree, said that about him. If after all that, not only does he stay afloat, but he wins a national title, I don't remember a bigger I told you so in the recent modern era of college football. It's one thing if he ignores it all, stays the course, and just keeps his head above water. If they win the whole thing, the storybook says he drops the mic and rides off into the sunset and goes and signs with ESPN and takes over on College Game Day for Lee Corso or something like that. I don't know that he would ever do that. I'm just saying that's what the storybook ending would be. Because he certainly has nothing left to accomplish. He already has his legacy sealed. It's not even a legacy thing. It's just it would be a testament to about 10 different things. You could teach a college course if Dabo wins the national title this year on the lessons learned along the way. However, what if they fall off this year? What if they're just like 9-3 or 8-4? Not terrible, but well off the pace. Well, then you'd probably look at it. It wouldn't be disastrous. What it would be is a pretty telling sign that Clemson's time in that conversation may be done. And that'd be okay. Yeah, not for a Clemson fan. They'd hate that. But as the onlooker that's outside the bubble, you would look at it and you'd say, they had a multi-year run. They won a couple of national titles. They were the standard bearer in their league for a long time. Still are, by the way. Good for them. That was a good, solid run. Probably over. They're probably back in the pack now, but it was a good, solid run. So you can clearly tell why that's intriguing, because you got this fork in the road, and you can go one way or the other way. Now, there is a third path, which is just, I guess, not a fork in the road, where they're kind of equal to what they were last year. Maybe good enough to win the conference, make the playoff, but nothing more. And that kind of leaves you in the netherworld, like in between. But that's why it's so intriguing. It can go a number of different ways, but they legitimately could win the national title this year. I was doing something with Kubelik the other night where we just turned on Zoom and rambled for like an hour and a half, and he recorded it, and then he uploaded it on the Cube Show YouTube channel, which I encourage you to go check out. But one of the things he did, I was holding up a piece of paper of the preseason rankings. He said, hey, hold that piece of paper up. Of all those teams, who do you feel most comfortable with? And I said Texas for a second. He said, mine is Clemson. And the more I thought about it, I said, yeah, I want to change my answer. I think it's Clemson too. Doesn't guarantee anything. It's a long season, so even if they go beat LSU 37-20 in week 1, it's a long season. It's just, that expectation level, if they meet it or exceed it this year versus if they regress, it so heavily determines the next 5 years. And it so heavily determines how Dabo's talked about, not legacy per se, but like if there's a second chapter to the Dabo legacy, well, that's the core of it. The 2025 championship run, you know how hard it is to ever win a national title, period, much less winning two of them, 9 years apart, and there was another one in between, but like the first and then maybe the last one 9 years apart, and how much changed and how little you changed. Talk about pride. That would be a point of pride. All right, let's move on. A lot of orange in the show. I didn't plan it this way, including the Zevia. I didn't plan it this way, but it just turned out this way. One of our most popular segments that's been recurring lately, I don't know why I'm sitting like that, has been the Truth Teller series. So I'm going to continue it tonight. Bradley, here's a good endpoint for you. Let's continue the Truth Teller series. I would like us to tell the truth about Josh Heupel, the head coach of Tennessee. Josh Heupel. What's the truth? What do you think about him? He has 30 wins over his last 3 seasons. Okay, so just to give you some Tennessee context, that is the most they've had since the golden era of Tennessee, really, in color TV history, and that's 1996 through 1998, the Philip Fulmer era. Won a national title during that stretch. Well, Heupel's won 30 games over his past 3 years. That's the kind of stuff they were doing back then. People wouldn't put him on par right now with where they had Phil Fulmer in the late 90s, early 2000s. Of course, you got to win a title. 10 or trash, title or bust. When I hear people tell the Heupel story or they give their opinion on him, it's like some of his history's memory hold to me, if that makes any sense. I'll tell you what I mean by that. He, to me, Josh Heupel, to me, is an example of right guy at the right place and time. because he came there from UCF, as did his AD. So Danny White was the AD at UCF, and Tennessee hires him, and then Danny White hires his head coach at UCF, Josh Heupel. But here's what people sometimes forget. They had just gone 6-4 at UCF in 2020. I think their record had fallen off a little bit each year since he took over for Frost, since he got there. There were whispers around Orlando that if they didn't significantly pick up the pace the following year, that Heupel would be in the hot seat conversation. And he gets hired by Tennessee, and it becomes a moot point. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, that's peculiar. But yet the guy who hired him is the guy who knows him better than anyone. So I'm gonna trust Danny White on this one. That was the extent of my reaction when Josh Heupel got hired. And he's gone there. And from 2008 to 2021, prior to Josh Heupel's arrival in Knoxville, from 2008 to 2021, they didn't have a single double-digit win season. 2 of his first 3 years have been double-digit win seasons. But think about this. In that 13-year stretch where Tennessee was out wandering in the wilderness, it's like there are the Israelites, there's Tennessee, kind of following them. 8 of those 13 seasons, they were 500 or worse. Inexcusable amounts of ineptitude at Tennessee, which just goes to show you how bad the wrong hire can compound matters. And then when you follow the wrong hire with another wrong hire with another wrong hire, just flaming bags of trash in your win and loss records when you pull up the Wikipedia page. And then Josh Heupel came in, and he's rectified it. So they're in a very weird spot right now. To tell you the truth about how I feel about Tennessee, they're in a very weird spot. On one hand, I think it could be a transition year for them this year. I'm not as high on Tennessee this year as the odds makers are, as many people around here are. Since I live in Nashville, I hear a ton of Tennessee talk. I'm not as high on Tennessee as some people are. That's not a terrible thing. It's just that's going to happen in college football. That's transition. That's going to happen every now and then. The reason I say that's a weird spot is because I'm very high on Tennessee's program. And I'm extremely high on what happened last year. All people remember is they got blown out at Ohio State. That's the way they ended the year. But that's one game. What I remember is, for all the talk about how big an offensive genius Josh Heupel is, and he is that, how'd they win last year? They were good offensively, but there were several extended periods last year of offensive drought. Defense is what won them games. They had a top 10 defense last year. To me, one of the surest signs of upward mobility, of upward trending as a team and a program is when the side of the ball you don't specialize in starts to elevate. Lincoln Riley is a classic example of the other side of this coin. Lincoln Riley scored 50 every game at Oklahoma, but they needed to because they were giving up 45 every game. And now he's gone to USC. And to a certain extent, he had the same problems at the outset. They were terrible defensively. He made the proper hires, and it looks like they're getting better there. But at Tennessee, like Heupel last year, it's defense. It was a defensive-oriented team. And so that, on one hand, makes me feel good about the trajectory of the program, even if they have a temporary hiccup this year. I still feel that about Tennessee. Now, I could be wrong. They could go 11-1 this year. But I'm just saying, even if they're 8-4 this year, I'd still feel the same way about him. Now, speaking of the way people feel about him, the Nico Iamaleava stuff is still fairly fresh in everyone's mind, but that'll fade. In the public's mind, they got too much else going on in their lives. They're worried about their own team. They're worried about everything else. That they're not going to remember intimate details of how Josh Heupel handled the Nico Iamaleava drama in spring of 2025. Tennessee fans will. So that really endeared him to Tennessee fans, as it should, because he finally stood up when so many other coaches were bending a knee to players and representatives of players asking for this and that. And Josh Heupel finally just chested up and said, yeah, go on. Go on. You know what? Even if we have to take a step back this year, go on. We don't need that here. And he got a standing round of applause from his fan base. And I applaud him too, even as I looked at it and I said, I'm not a believer this will necessarily help their overall record this upcoming year. It may help their standing as a program overall. And I want you to also think about this. If Tennessee's the kind of team that's just scrappy and they got the hateful 3 stars, which are worth their weight in gold, if they just got enough of those, sprinkled with some 4- and 5-star talent, but if their nucleus just decides to go all in for Josh Heupel and they're the kind that'll take your kneecaps out in a close game, then you may find yourself late in the year and Tennessee's just battered and bloodied, but they're still coming for more and they're still in the fringe of the playoff race. And you may find yourself saying, those kids are playing for him in the way they are, partly because of how he reacted in the spring to a guy that didn't necessarily want to be all in. I could see that. So that's the truth to me about Josh Heupel right now. Bradley showed you the odds for Tennessee to win the SEC. Not great odds right now. However, it may be that you're sitting home in Kingsport or Johnson City or Memphis and you're saying, that last thing you said about Tennessee, I think that's right. I think there's going to be an intangible nature to the grit and just the hard-nosed determination of this team this year that they want to play and they want to fight for a guy who stood up for them in the spring, and I think they're going to overachieve. Well, you're in luck because you can go bet on all those sorts of things right now at FanDuel. You can go look. If you saw that list and you said, oh, wait, do they have that for every team over there? I'm not a big bettor. I just want to go look. Yes, you can go look as well. Penalty-free. You can go look. But if you want to go bet over there and if you want to get early value on this stuff, now's the time to do it. You know how long the line's going to be at the window come August. It's not really a window, it's the internet, but you get my point. A lot of the value is going to be pounded out of those numbers by August, so there's value on the board right now, and they're the exclusive betting and odds provider of the show. We appreciate them. Let's wrap the show up with bold predictions. Everything is a 9 or bolder on this particular show tonight. Bradley, here's a good end point. Bold prediction season, the things that you believe that you have agreed to let me put on the air tonight in hopes of December glory. Let's take a look at the first one. This comes to us from our buddy John, JD for short, right here in Tennessee in Tazewell. Ole Miss and Florida in the SEC championship game. I'm going to make that a 9.5 on the boldness scale. These are the number 5 and number 6 teams in the odds to win the SEC right now at FanDuel. They do play each other in the regular season. What are we counting on here? Well, we're counting on Florida to overcome what is, in our estimation, the toughest schedule in the country. And we're also counting on Austin Simmons and Ole Miss's defense to shine. That's just a lot to count on. So, I mean, they're up there. Like, it wouldn't be a stunner if either or made the SEC title game, but for both of them to make it over the likes of Texas or LSU or Alabama or Georgia, it's a little bit tougher for me to see. That's a 9.5. Next up, this one I wrestled with a little while today. Carson from Houston, Texas. He said Jeremiah Smith breaks the all-time receiving yards record of over 2,000 yards due to the expanded playoff adding more games. Okay, so Trevor Inslee at Nevada a while back, I think late 90s, he set the record. The record is 2,060 receiving yards in one season. I think he did it in 12 games. I think. Now, what we're saying here is, okay, but Jeremiah Smith's probably going to play more than 12 games, so that, in part, is why he's going to break the all-time record. I only made this a 9 on the boldness scale. Like, you're telling me a guy's going to break a record that stood since the turn of the millennium, and it's only a 9. That should tell you how good he is. Devontae Smith won the Heisman in 2020. He played 13 games. He had a little over 1,800 receiving yards. Jeremiah Smith, he averaged 142.8 yards per game last year. That pace over 16 games comfortably gets him the record. In fact, he doesn't even need to be close to 140 per game for him to get the record. It's just, does he sustain that over an entire year? Does he stay healthy? And does Julian Sayin have the kind of game that it takes to get him the ball like that? I certainly can count on Ohio State to have the supporting cast where they're not trying to force him the ball enough. I think if Brian Hartline sort of in the back of his mind decides this is one of my goals, I want to get that kid the Heisman. I want to get that kid records. Even in the games they know are going to be blowouts, that's just when you feed him the ball 10 times in the first half. So he gets his, as you know he's going to be on the bench in the second half. I'm going to put a 9 on that one. The next one would be sad. Alan from Melbourne, Florida said, sadly, there you go, his words, not mine, Mike Norvell gets fired before the end of the season. That is a 9.5 to me. Is it a disaster season? Because if it is, there's really no limit at that point. It would be 2 of them in a row. Is it just an up and down season, though? If it's an up and down season, I don't think he's going to get fired before the season's over. He may not be fired at all. But if he was fired, it wouldn't be before the season's over. Bradley, if you've got Florida State's schedule, show me for a second, because I just want you to look at this. So, 1-8-15. Their bye week is after the Stanford game. So if they're going to fire him, my point is, if they don't do it after the Stanford game, there's not another bye week the rest of the way, and there's really no FCS game. Like, there's no convenient place to do it. They go Wake Forest at home, at Clemson, Vatech, at NC State, at Florida. Their schedule's backloaded. So the biggest risk games are on the back end. Like, they should win some games to start off the season, at least not be terrible. And then if they want to fire him, do you fire him like the week you're about to go on the road in conference play? You fire him the week you're about to go to Gainesville? I just don't. Even if they're going to do it, I don't know if that's going to happen during the season. And I know that's the new trend, to do it and go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off and let's get the search started. And maybe they will. Maybe it'll be a moot point and Florida State wins 9 games, but I make that a 9.5. And lastly, South Carolina. Okay, so this was from Lexington, South Carolina. South Carolina has a top 10 offense, a top 15 defense, and makes the playoff. And there was some Lenora Seller stuff too. Let's just go with that. That's a 9.75. South Carolina was 16th in defense last year and lost a bunch. So we're asking them to improve despite all the draft departures. They had the 45th offense last year. And I don't know who in the world they're going to count on for depth at wide receiver. The tailback situation is still a little weird because of the eligibility thing, and they just have to significantly improve offensively. I don't think this is going to happen. They could make the playoff without this happening. However, you would think if this does happen, they're a lock to make the playoff, right? No, Ole Miss did this last year. Do you know that? Ole Miss was top 15 in defense, top 10 offense. They didn't even make the playoff. Tennessee was the other one. So the defense just lost a lot. And on the offensive side, the wide receiver position, the running back position, you just count on Lenora Sellers becoming that much better this year. If any of that doesn't happen, you got no shot at a top 15 offense. So I'm going to make that a 9.75 on the boldness scale. Good stuff. Good stuff as always. All right. We will be back, Sunday night? We'll be back, same time we're supposed to be. And we really appreciate it. So much going on. Oh, make sure you're following on social, at Josh Pate CFB. There's so much going on. It's all good stuff. I would even go as far as to say great stuff. Heavily involved, but great stuff. And you'll know all of it before the season starts. In the meantime, we got to go home. It's dinner time. So for producer Jesse, director Bradley, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great start to your weekend, and God bless.